Today we're going to fix the seat on the driver's side lower portion on a 2002 Toyota Avalon. Here's our finished product. We'll go over some of the steps that you need to do before you jump into this. First thing is disconnect the battery just for the safety of the airbag. You want to have it disconnected for about 30 minutes or more. There's a harness underneath the seat and 2 plugs, and one of them is for your airbag. So having the battery disconnected is making sure everything stays safe. If you have an electric seat, you'll want it lifted up, and you'll have to move it back and forth before you disconnect the battery because you have 14mm bolts in the front, and then there's 2 in the back that are very difficult to get at if the seat is down or back. And then for the seat back, move it all the way up and take the headrest out. That'll make getting this whole seat out once it's unbolted a lot easier. Here's the wiring harness that we're going to disconnect. There's a clip right under here that you can use this tool to remove, and then we'll take the airbag connection off, and there's usually a motor connector somewhere back here as well. All right, airbag's unplugged, motor is unplugged for the seat. Everything should be free and easy to get out, so we'll tilt the seat back up and pull it out of the car. All right, when you're pulling the seat out, I would recommend pulling here. There is this cross member on the frame. You definitely see this little black rod here that twists and will adjust the seat forward and back. It is typically plastic and will not support you lifting up on it, so just be careful if you're touching this, because you may need an entirely new seat if you try and lift up on it. Next part is to remove the trim from both sides. That side has 2 Phillips head screws. This one will probably have a screw hidden somewhere, and then a bunch of clips. There's some plugs on the back of this that you probably have to disconnect as well. There's actually a 3rd screw on the back here, and that clips to this plastic piece. If you unscrew all 3 of them, you can snap or unsnap this piece and then just work it loose from the seatbelt buckle. All right, now we have these bolts. We'll get to them in a second. We got to do the side with the seat adjustment, and we can do the bolts on both sides to remove the seat back. For the side with the electronic controls, you have a screw right down here, and then you have a similar one to the other side on the back. We'll unsnap that and then probably have to unplug these. So I was incorrect. These pieces will pop off, and then we have 3 more Phillips heads to take out. This is our plug for the lumbar support. So as long as you have these 3 screws out, the rear one back here and this bottom one, you can just gently unsnap all the way around, and the whole face piece will come off, and then you can unplug this, and it just sits on the floor. Now that we have the seat back exposed on both sides, we can disconnect these 2 bolts on both sides, and then we'll be able to get at the seat cover, and we shouldn't have much more tear down on this, but we'll see as we get there. All right, now that the seat's loose, we still have this rod that goes through here, so you'll want to be gentle with it, but it will allow you the freedom to get around all this stuff. There are, hard to see, let's see, those guys right there that we got to remove. Once you peel these back, they're down here. This has a lip on the front of it that you gotta like untuck from this rail, and it'll start to come off. Now you'll need a pair of diagonal cutters, and there's some brass hog rings down here, kind of hard to see. We'll use these, and we'll clip each of these rows because they'll have a bunch, and then the seat will come off. As you're pulling this cover back, there are these little rings like this at each of these spots that are put in to this part. They run along this line, and so you'll use these diagonal cutters just to line it up and pinch. That's how they come off. There's a hog ring plier that I'll show you for putting it back on. Next step is to match up everything, make sure it looks the same. This is actually supposed to be the same color. The sides match, but the actual seat doesn't because it's so worn. And then on our replacement cover, it has just a thicker like cloth rod instead of a metal one. Trying to see if I can get a good angle to show you guys. Yeah, almost like cardboard versus these metal pieces. Not really a way to transfer them on this one, so we'll just stick with these. Basically, the hog ring will kind of cut into part of this and then grab around the metal rods in the seat. One of the things you can do is just use a hole punch and try and match up the same spots, and you'll put the hole punch between like the seam down here and where this backer rod or whatever you want to call it is. It's right in this gray area, and try and match them up with the spots here, and it'll make putting the seat on with the hog rings a lot easier. I decided to just take the cushion out to make this easier and do it before you take off all the hog rings, but that was just getting a little difficult, so we'll try it this way. Basically, all of these parts that have this rod are gonna fit right into these grooves, just like the old seat was. I always start from the back and work my way forward. That way I have somewhere to pull tight with that leading edge that we took off earlier. So let's give it a whirl. Here's our hog ring pliers. These are basically defaulting to being closed, but they won't put a bunch of pressure on. So you can load up these hog rings and have it in like a ready position. You hook part of the fabric that we were talking about and then push down on the cushion where the exposed metal is and clamp. Here's an example of one that's ready to go. If you're doing this for the first time, just be patient. It's very easy for these to slip out and just get kind of everywhere, not clamp the actual seat or not clamp the fabric. So use your cutters, take it back out, start over. Take your time and it'll end up looking pretty nice. How I did this when I reattached it is I started in the middle towards the back, worked towards the front, went to the second from the middle, back to front, and then finished that side, came over to this side. Now I'll tuck everything around the edges, and there's a couple of rings that snap to the bottom, and I'll show you those. Just a quick preview. This is what it should look like for the most part. Might be a couple wrinkles here and there, but it's gonna look like that once you start using it anyway. So to me, this is great. Does the trick, and it doesn't look anything like that. Once you get it back on the frame, it's a little tricky. Easiest part is there's an elastic band here, goes over this. You had to unclip this piece to get it off, so you just leave it off, put the rubber on, or the rubber band on, and then clip it back. And then what I did was I have one hog ring here, should be good. And there's a zip tie clip down here that I cut a hole through the fabric and then reattach the zip tie. These aren't super paramount to keeping anything tight, but it's just an extra precaution to really get a finished look. And then same thing on the front that we did when we took it off. So I'll repinch these clips down. I've got it hooked onto that rail. So while I'm thinking about it, and they're pretty easy just to pinch right back down as long as you've got the entire rail situated. Sorry you have to listen to my heavy breathing. It is a little bit of tight spaces to work in. So we should have everything where we want it, and now we'll just reattach the seat back. I didn't do this seat back because it wasn't nearly as bad, but now looking at it, probably should have. Once you install in reverse order, should look like this. Make sure you get all your bolts tightened down properly, and then wipe down any of those surfaces that you might have noticed were kind of grubby when you pulled it apart.